Around mid-May 2004, my life started falling apart. I became frustrated, unable to think, and disoriented in familiar locations. My family doctor referred me to specialists for tests. Each saw something, but nothing definitive. My vascular surgeon suggested a cardiologist. He stated, "We need to take a look inside, but your symptoms suggest a little heart problem. You should see a neurologist. Take this medication when you experience pain until we can schedule a look inside that heart." Some chest aches plagued me during my neurologist visit that week. Took the drug. The neurologist said, "Looks okay. Go see your endocrinologist, get that thyroid under control, and in 6 months, you'll feel perfect. But I'll order an electron and a scan just to be safe." By noon on May 27, my world crashed. My head felt like someone had sucked out my throat and blood. There was no blood. When I could see and think again, my back, chest, and shoulder blade hurt. Okay, I'm dying here. I went outside, sat down, and called 911. 5 minutes later, they hooked me up to monitors and whatnot. "Nope, we'll take you to the hospital. Doesn't look like a heart attack though." I was seated in the hospital waiting area. "Here, fill out these forms and we'll call you." A nurse entered and said, "Hi Mark, let me see the forms." "Well, I would if I could. I am having a hard time moving." The nurse and my wife took me to the triage area. They looked at me funny. "Smile for me," said the nurse. I consented. "Raising your eyebrows for me, squeeze my hands." They laughed at me. My wife said, "What's wrong with me?" "No, I don't want to hear this. You've had a stroke on your left side." My feeling outweighed my heart anguish. My eyes started to water. My God, what is happening to me? I was admitted to the coronary care unit, monitored, given blood thinners, heart meds, and chest pain medication. The diagnosis was confirmed by a neurologist who ordered tests. He claimed they didn't like the heartbeat and summoned the doctor. Heart specialist arrived the next morning. "Well, you've had a stroke. You're going to be all right. We are going to do an angiogram on the 1st of the month, just to check it out after the holiday." I felt and ate better on June 1. I was well with the angiography. In the morning, they prepared me for the procedure, led me downstairs to the lab, and began. After healing, my wife would visit. Minimal operation and recovery pain. There was no problem with my wife. My angiography doctor told me, "There is a problem with the right coronary artery. We will fix it tomorrow. We will transfer you to the main hospital just for safety. In the morning, you will be just fine." Okay, I'm scared, but okay. Knowing the procedures were risky, I got the documentation done before the stroke. As a precaution, I gave my wife power of attorney. I prayed that night for Jesus to lead and advise them. I saw my church's pastor and requested him to pray for me. I was ready. Everything would be perfect. June 2nd morning, I awaited transportation to the main hospital. The transport team was late. I was scheduled for the 10:30 a.m. operation. In summary, I arrived at 10:30. I was seen by my wife. I said, "If something should happen, you have the paperwork. Everything will be okay. I'll be in recovery when you get there." The nurses picked me up at 11:00 a.m. They instructed my wife to wait and will notify her when I was done. They took me into the suite to prepare it for the cardiologist. They wrapped me, put up local anesthesia, and played the doctor's favorite classical music. Enter the doctor. Commencing process. Provide local catheter insertion. I absorbed the roommates and doctor's conversations. They told my wife about an hour to an hour and a half. And it went on. The moving camera puts pressure on my chest. I hear them discussing stent and catheter pressures. Suddenly, the doctor says something really wrong. Oh, I think, what? People suddenly stopped talking and started speaking from the rear of the lab where the computers sit. Furious talking is heard from afar. Is that a clot? Not sure. Is it? Don't know. Then my chest felt heavy. I groaned. Are you in pain? No, just a lot of pressure. The pressure should go away. Another voice in the room said, Did you give him the morphine? Who? Replied the other voice. Lights came on as equipment, monitors, and shields were drawn back. I thought, this is big trouble. When the cardiologist asked, should I remove the catheter or leave it inflated? A voice said, leave it in. I'll take it out when I'm finished. There was a man I'd never seen before peering down at me. He appeared friendly and encouraging. He began by saying, I don't have time to explain what happened, but something went wrong. I'm going to take you to open heart surgery. We'll take care of you. We'll get the authorization from your wife." So afraid was I that all I could think of was praying for them to have the Lord with them. My wife entered. The doctor was in scrubs this time. My wife held my hand, and the doctor said, "We'll do our best. See you after you recover." I said my last goodbye to someone I loved. The anesthesiologist looked down at me and remarked, "You'll be asleep before we get there." I woke up on a ventilator with many tubes and cables. My wife clasped my hand and whispered, "You're going to be all right, honey. It's all right." Nurses, physicians, and technicians checked, wiped, and injected. I realized something serious had happened. Blood hung from my chest, and I felt like I had jumped from a 10th floor building onto my breastbone. I had a stroke, botched angiography, angioplasty, open heart surgery, and tons of blood loss in 7 days. I later found the artery blue. The prudent decision to leave the catheter blown up saved me from bleeding to death. I discovered that my mild to moderate heart disease was more than moderate, and that being on the heart-lung machine had done additional damage. Great, but now I hurt, dizzy, I can't breathe, and my blood pressure is plummeting. What else could go wrong? Be careful with your prayers. Things were improving as I recovered from my latest assault. I walked and sat in a chair by the bed for an hour. I started eating again and prayed, "Thank you, Lord, for allowing me to stay to do whatever it was you wanted me to do for you, even though I still don't know exactly what you want. But thank you for the lesson learned." On June 5, the surgeon and other doctors are discussing going home. Wow, going well, still hard to move around. It took me 2 hours to wash from a chair next to the wash basin because I'm feeble. However, they removed the chest tubes because I was no longer bleeding and I may wash today. The doctor came in at midday and said, "We are thinking of cutting you loose this afternoon, but we may hang on to you for another day or so because your blood pressure keeps dropping. We're going to check your meds and adjust that. Just a day or so." When my relatives visited, I was still praying and delighted, like rebirth. On June 6, I was ready to rest at home and do what God desired. I believed I would discover it and fulfill His request. At 6:00 a.m. on the 7th, I was restless. The nurses changed over at 7:00. I didn't see one until after 7:30. I waited for hospital meals since I was hungry. Breakfast what? I forgot what I ordered. No matter. I simply wanted to eat. I watched TV on the bedside after 7:00. I felt heavy in my jaws after going to the toilet while waiting for food. As I removed my glasses and rubbed my jaw, I thought, man, this may become a headache or something. Nothing, some food won't help. I was excited when the food trays came off the lift. At 7:30, I was thinking about supper and going home. I was going to contact my wife to pick me up this afternoon. The most fantastic journey of my life began in less than a minute. A sensation of foreboding struck me. I felt no discomfort or blood flow. I murmured, "Help me, please. Help me, God, help now." I was no longer in a hospital room, but on a lovely road. It was I pictured a 10-year-old me with a long willow branch over my shoulder and a red bandana like a hobo. I knew some folks and didn't know others. We smiled as we passed on that road, and I was in amazement of the most gorgeous road I had ever seen, with incredible intricacies. A mountain I saw as a child came to mind. Looking up from the road, I saw the mountain, the most gorgeous I had ever seen, had colors, nuances of color, and shadows that no human language could express. I saw and felt as if answers were flooding my thoughts before I could ask. God permeated everything. It seemed like the promise of being filled with what your soul wanted was fulfilled at that instant. Everything your soul required was met before you asked. Time does not exist here since there is no distance. Everything your soul wants to know is done. You know you're spiritual. Never before had I felt so satisfied. I met my Lord at the perfect place and was accepted in His house. How cool is that? I felt like I had come home from perfection to be born into sin, live in imperfection, never truly knowing God's wonder, and then finding oneself at His door as He welcomes you. A voice from nowhere but everywhere said, "Mark, you must go back." "No, I can't go back," I protested. The voice repeated, "You must return. I have given you a task you have not finished." "No, please, God, no. Let me stay." I was nude and moving backwards through the darkest darkness at breakneck speed. Huge lightning bolts went in all directions into the darkness from my feet to my head. Lightning was dazzling, but it didn't pierce the terrible blackness. My eyes opened and my right arm swung. I said, "No, please stop doing this. Stop, let me go." I looked forward and saw a stadium full of people cheering to save me. Everyone was shouting numbers and instructing others, making a huge noise. Someone held my hand to my left. A young woman appeared. She looked deep into my eyes, into my soul. The noise stopped, leaving me to hear her voice. Her eyes stayed in my soul. Her voice was angelic. She said, "It is not your choice now, it is his." I stopped resisting and flailing, ceased fighting with arms and ceased declaring. I heard a nurse say clear, a machine beep, and a loud hum in the distance. My final memory was 15 hours later. Returned by God. Why did God return me? Did he send this girl to help me do his will? She helped me return to reality. I think so. He honored his promise. I must. After this remarkable adventure, I woke up without a respirator and felt my body's spirituality alter. It became clear as I opened my eyes after 15 hours of travel. Instead of seeing with the mind, these eyes looked out at the world like my soul. Everything had greater importance than I had ever considered. All my words, gestures, and facial expressions mattered. I grinned from the heart and sobbed from gratitude. As feeble as I was, breathing was hard. Every breath was hard, and my body hurt inexplicably. However, I was grateful for the experience. Living for God's mission gives every agony and breath meaning. I felt like God breathed into me whenever I needed air. Everything I said felt like God wrote it, and I was reading it. Instead of thinking on myself, I focused on everyone I met. Everyone else became significant, and I told the 2 male nurses who cared for me that night what happened. I told them about a nurse-looking woman. Her name was unknown, but I could describe her. I informed them she appeared on my left side that day and thanked her directly for assisting me. One remarked, "The way you described her, it sounds like Debbie, and she worked that morning. When I see her, I'll ask." A knock on my door 2 days later in an intense coronary care unit mid-morning. "Come in," I said. My chamber was entered cautiously by a young woman. I said, "You are Debbie, aren't you?" "Yes," she murmured, returning to my left. She took my hand. "So happy to see you doing so well after what you went through." Again, I peered into her eyes. Again, she peered into my soul. Thank you, thank you. You made it possible for me to return to this life." I did not want to come back, you know. You made it possible. God placed you there at just that time. Even the words you said to me, God sent an angel, you, to help me return to this world. My sadness and gratitude shone in my eyes. I saw the Lord's Spirit in her. This made sense to me because I kept thinking, I will never leave you alone. I will send an angel ahead to prepare a place for you. And my Father's favorite verse, I go now to prepare a place for you, for in my Father's mansion there are many rooms. While my chamber was being finished, my Father dispatched me on an errand in God's house. I wasn't sure, do angels exist? I now know they exist and are always present. The soul looking out in their eyes makes me kneel before them and thank them every time I see it. Thank you so much for your presence, Lord, in this being soul. On June 10, I started moving and need constant supervision. To prevent abrupt cardiac death, my doctors are considering a chest defibrillator. The doctor discussed the risk before installing the gadget the night of the 14th. To ensure the device worked, they would stop my heart twice and shock me. Shaving followed wash basin washing. I prayed for everyone who would be in surgery the next day. I looked in the mirror suddenly. Again, I peered close. Was anyone there? The new me who was within me? I no longer recognized Mark's eyes. I spoke, "Who are you?" to the eyes at me. Answering gently, "It is the new Mark. The old one no longer exists." I asked, "Good Lord, what do you want of me?" A soft voice said, "You need to love more. You need to accept love more, be forgiving more. Keep in mind what you were privileged to see, a world that few would remember. Most important, love is the answer." I was shocked. My eyes were filled with tears, and I kept saying, "Thank you for the new me? Oh, thank you. My eyes are now opened. I now understand the church song, 'Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. I want to see you, which has shattered me. Now I see with my heart, not my mind. I saw God. I realized I had seen him often in my youth. He showed me so many things on earth as in heaven, but just what my eyes could see. I now understand that the Bible claimed heaven and earth were perfect at creation. Earth was perfect for man to have everything. Because our predecessors disobeyed, the planet is imperfect. Are you ready? God asked us when we transition from one imperfection to the next. Your predecessors had perfection but were not ready for it. Are you ready? I had to die to grasp that. God asked and showed me, but I chose the human method. My method was best. My body died peacefully and beautifully. The return trip was difficult. I was so afraid that the darkness and anguish made me feel like I was being rejected from the wonderful existence forever and sent to hell. Please learn God's grace before dying. Some learn the hard way. Some only understand when that relationship is threatened with withdrawal. Open your heart and see the grace and power of I Am. Believe that He is and that He has prepared a home for you without sorrow, suffering, or human constraints. No distance, no time, as your soul desires. We cannot conceive how the soul sees what it wants to perceive, knowing everything quickly and realizing that God is in everything forever. He is perfect and always with you. After dying, I realized how much He was my buddy and how essential His love was. His counsel is right, just ask and listen. God screams occasionally but mostly whispers. Why just listen when He yells? I left the hospital on June 17th, 5 months ago. My life has changed since then. I have contacted my daughter and grandchildren, whom I hadn't seen in a while. I met, saw, and had fun with them all. I survived 3 hurricanes and their damage with my family. We went weeks without amenities. We had moments, but each other was more essential. Whether this writing will continue is unknown. I could say more, but I'll let God do it. Pain, pleasure, insult, and harm have I endured. However, it is the point. God gave me everything for His purposes, not mine. If He gives me more time, I'll continue His work.